All right, so in the last lecture, we discussed the basic things within the ethics chapter. And those were, let me just recall it quickly. And those were the 5 fundamental principles of ethics. This is one of the most important things. 5 fundamental principles of ethics. And these were the professional behavior, integrity, competence and due care, confidentiality, and objectivity. And then we discuss the 5 ethical threats. And this is the topic which we are going to continue now, because each of the issue within the ACCA Code of Ethics will give rise to a particular threat or threats. And then the ACCA Code of Ethics provides the safeguards to overcome, to reduce, to eliminate those threats. So we have the 5 ethical threats, and this is the main topic now. And the 5 ethical threats were self-interest threat, self-review threat, advocacy, familiarity, and intimidation. So let's just recall quickly. Self-interest threat means acting in your own interest. So if the firm or the member of the firm is acting in their own interest, then this gives rise to a self-interest threat. Then self-review threat. So if you're reviewing your own work, then that is the self-review threat. Advocacy means when you are taking the position of the client, you're representing them unusually, for example, in front of taxation authorities or potential investors. Today, we will see many examples of it. And then we have the familiarity is personal, family, friendly, long-standing relationship that may impair, affect your independence. And then we have the intimidation. So intimidation is when you are being threatened or being pressurized by the audit client. That is known as the intimidation threat. So basically, it's intimidation. It's itself a threat. So now we are going to see in the slides many issues which are being mentioned within the ACCA Code of Ethics. And as I told you in the last lecture, that whatever we are studying in this ethics chapter is pertaining to the auditor and the audit firms, how they need to maintain their independence, how they need to maintain their objectivity. And there are certain threats which may affect, impair their independence and objectivity, and those are known as the ethical threats. And then the firm and the auditor needs to place the safeguards in order to save themselves from those ethical threats. So, okay, this was the 5 fundamental principles of ethics. We have already done it. And remember that this is important in terms that you can have this topic in the knowledge-based question. Knowledge-based question is the straightforward question you may have in the example. For 5 marks, for example, examiner may ask you to explain the 5 fundamental principles of ethics. And this again, 5 ethical threats relevant to the case study and even relevant to the objective test case questions, plus also relevant to the knowledge-based thing that examiner may ask you to define 5 ethical threats and give one example of each. This has already been tested, so be prepared for that. So knowledge-based thing, again for 5 marks. And when the examiner says give one example with each, then you have to write the ethical threats example. For example, the financial interest threat. Financial interest is an example of the self-interest. Okay, now we have this financial interest right in front of us that we are going to study. So each of these issues which we are going to study will give rise to a particular threat. So first of all, we have the financial interest. Now, what is financial interest? What sort of financial interest we are talking about? So financial interest means when you are having the shares or the investment within an audit client. So shares, financial interest in the form of the shares. For example, the audit manager is having the shares in the audit client, the audit firm itself having the shares in the audit client, or investment. So which threat this give rise to? This give rise to a self-interest threat. Now, this is something very important, that how the self-interest threat. Self-interest threat because, for example, you are an audit manager, you are having the shares in an audit client, and let's assume you see that their financials are manipulated. Basically, they are in a loss and they have shown a profit. When you tell them that, okay, you need to fix it, you need to, fix the profit, the misstated one, and you have to show the loss. So when they show the loss and the financial is going to be in the market, it will drop the share price and you are having the shares as well. So you will have a significant capital loss over there. So in order to avoid your own loss, the audit firm or the member of the audit firm, may forgive this thing, and they may tell the client, okay, fine, okay, so you can keep this, no problem with that. But that is not as a self-interest because they will be having the financial loss as well when the share price drops. So they just ignore and forgive that thing. They do not tell the client to fix it. So a financial interest exists where an audit firm has a financial interest in the client's affairs. So it's sort of shared investment. This gives rise to the self-interest threat. And how independence is compromised? Because the auditor or the audit firm may not be in a position to challenge them just because they are concerned regarding their own financial losses. Now, why you need to have this explanation thing in your mind? Because in the exam, examiner asks you to identify and explain the threat. Identification is basically writing the case study line and then writing this give rise to a self-interest threat, this give rise to self-review threat. For example, here, if the examiner writes that, okay, the audit manager is having 2% shares in an audit client, so first of all, you write this line, copy paste it, and then you tell, okay, this give rise to a self-interest threat. Now, this is not sufficient because here you have done only the identification. You need explanation as well. Explanation is actually the explanation of the ethical threat, how this is a self-interest threat. So the independence of the audit firm or the auditor may be compromised by the fear of having the financial losses if the share price drops. So this is the explanation. You can write the same thing in any way, in your own words. You can just maneuver the words, you can change the words, but just giving the same flavor that independence of the firm or the auditor may be compromised just because they're concerned regarding the financial losses of their own. So the ACCA Code of Ethics says that the firm, the member of the firm, which is the auditor, and their immediate family members, such as spouse or dependent child, should not have the direct or indirect material financial interest in the client because that gives rise to a self-interest. Now, coming toward the safeguards, I have written 4 to 5 safeguards in every slide. You're not supposed to write each and everything over there. Why there are 4 to 5 safeguards? Because you usually have this question in the objective test case question as well. And there the examiner asks you, what is the most appropriate safeguard? Like they give you the 4 options or 5 options or 3 options sometime. And they ask you what is the most appropriate, and then sometimes what is the least appropriate, most appropriate, and sometimes least appropriate. You will see when we are doing question of from the exam kit. So that is why it is important you understand, okay, what is the purity of the safeguards and what are the safeguards. The safeguards, first of all, you try to eliminate the threat, but most of the time this is not possible to eliminate the threat. What you can do is simply reduce the threat. So safeguards is disposing of the interest. Now, if the audit firm is having the shares in an audit client and they believe that the audit is more important than those shares, so what they can do to maintain their independence, they can dispose of those shares before the audit starts. So obviously, when they are doing that, their independence will be ensured. But they cannot ask such thing from, like for example, if the audit manager is having the shares, you must dispose of the shares. They cannot do that. Because obviously, that is their personal matter if they're having the shares. So what you can do is simply you can remove that individual, whoever is having the shares with an audit client. You can remove that individual from the audit client. You can take someone else. And so these are the most, important safeguards within this context. And then we are having keeping the client's audit committee informed of the situation. First of all, you need to understand what is audit committee. We know that this is as a result of the corporate governance that the companies listed and just in particular nowadays are having the audit committees, the remuneration committees. So audit committee is basically a committee which ensures that the audit is conducted in an independent way, both the external and the internal. So here we are talking about the external audit. So if the audit firm is having, the shares in the audit client, and they are not, significant shares, a smaller number of shares, it does not threaten the independence in fact. So what they can do is they can bring that thing in the audit committee's attention that, okay, look, we are having the shares, but we'll make sure our independence is not compromised. And then using an independent partner to review the work carried out if necessary. Now, you have done the audit, you were having the shares, you have done the audit. Now, what you can do is you can ask some independent partner to review your audit work so that it confirms that your independence was not compromised by having the shares in audit line. So first, if the firm can dispose the shares, they should. But if they believe that having the shares is more important than the audit, so what they can do, even they can resign from the audit as well. They can say them, okay, you can please contact another firm because these shares are more important for us. Or for example, if a person is having the shares, so you can remove that person from the audit team and you can take someone else. And then we have the other safeguards as well. So this is the financial interest, a very important one, because we see these things coming up in the exam. Now, why I've written this QCR over here is this QCR is that when you're reviewing the audit file from an independent partner, why you are doing that? Because you as an audit firm are subject to the QCR. Your independent body, the recognized supervisory body, will see how you have done the audit. And if this thing comes into their attention, that you were having the shares in the audit client and then you have done the audit as well. So they may ask you what safeguard then you have put to maintain your independence. Then you will be saying them, look, we knew this thing. And when we did the audit, we asked an independent partner to review our work and they have confirmed as well that our independence is not compromised. So this is, making sure that you put something in front of your professional body that you did something in this regard. Okay, then we are having the close business relationship, similar to the one we have studied earlier in the financial interest. So business relationship between the audit firm and the client or the member of the audit firm and the client. So this is give rise to the self-interest threat and the intimidation threat. Now, how this is a self-interest? Now, obviously, when you are doing the audit and you're having the business relationship as well, you will always look to continue both. You will never ever want to lose either of that. So you want to continue the audit, also the business relationship with our clients. So you will always try to keep the client satisfied just to make sure that you are doing both with them. So this is the self-interest. Intimidation is when they say you such thing, for example, like if you are not going to do audit according to us, then we are going to give the audit to another firm. If you are not going to do the audit according to us, we may terminate the business relationship with you guys. So this may be counted as a significant intimidation from them. So whenever the client is having a close business relationship, the audit firm and the client and the member of the audit firm and the client, this gives rise to the self-interest and intimidation. And obviously, when they're having a business relationship, this will give rise to the familiarity threat as well. But we talk about the main ones first, and then there are the secondary ones. Okay, what is the type of business relationship they may have? Although this is not an important thing for the exam, but just understanding thing. They may have a partnership, they may have a joint venture, they may have the joint services or products. The firm may act as the marketer, distributor, or promoter of the client's products. For example, if your client is a software house and they make the softwares for the different business entities, and so you start promoting their softwares to your other clients, and then you get a commissions based on that. So this is the close business relationship. So a commercial or common financial interest between an assurance firm or a member of the assurance team and the clients, and this gives rise to the self. Again, in the exam, when it comes, so you start with, for example, if the examiner has written the case study that the audit firm is having a business relationship with the audit client. So first of all, you pick and then paste, copy and paste this case study line. And then you write, this gives rise to the self-interest and intimidation threat. Firm will always try to keep the client satisfied because of continuing both the services, hence their objectivity may be compromised. And they may get also be intimidated by the client in a way that we may give audit to another firm. So the objectivity of the firm may be compromised if they are significantly threatened by the audit client. So this is the explanation. Now, the safeguards depends upon the practicality of the situation. For example, if the firm is doing both the audit and the business relationship, and they need to choose one of that, what they how they will think. So if they believe that the business relationship is more important, they're earning better than the audit. So what they're going to do is they refuse the assurance engagement. They should just tell them, okay, we will continue with the business relationship. You can have audit from another firm. If they believe audit is important, the business relationship is, something not very important or gives you less in terms of the monetary value, then you can terminate the business relationship. So it depends upon the practicality of the situation. And if the firm believes that they need to continue both, obviously everyone will wish to have both of the arrangements with the audit client. Then what they need to do is they should bring the business relationship to an immaterial level. Now, immaterial level means the level where they cannot be threatened, where they cannot be pressurized by the audit client. Like, for example, they ask you, if you're not going to do an audit according to us, we may terminate business relationship with you. And then you say, okay, fine, we can do business with another company. We can promote the products of another company. Doesn't matter. So things like that. So when you are not that much involved with the audit client, so obviously they are not going to intimidate you as well, keeping the business relationship at the immaterial level. So make sure in the exam, when the question comes, it can be either in the form of objective test case question. So there will be a case study and the examiner may ask you, for example, I don't expect this sort of easy question coming up in the exam, that they give you that the audit firm is having a business relationship with the audit client, which of the following threat it may create. I do not expect such questions. Maybe you are lucky to have those things in the exam. But mostly the examiner asks the safeguards. What is the most appropriate safeguard? What is the least appropriate safeguard? So they give you the number of options. So if you do remember these safeguards, then you can easily pick and choose. Okay, so yes, close business relationships. Remember this thing that in the exam, when it is coming up, examiner will give you a table. I'm talking about the case study question, constructed response question. Examiner will give you a case study and then a word pad. We have the computer-based exams. So on the right-hand side, there will be a word pad being given, a table will be there. So the left-hand side is for identify and explain. Identify means when you identify the threat with the case study line. So you start with the case study line, and then you write this represents self-interest threat, this represents self-review threat. And then explanation is what I'm telling you, that the explanation of threat, how this is the self-interest threat, how this is the self-review. And right in front of that, there will be safeguards. So what you can do is try to put the names of the client and the firm within the safeguards. For example, you are writing the reduce the level of relationship, then you write the name of the firm. The ABC firm, for example, should reduce the level of relationship so that the financial trust becomes immaterial. Things like that. So when there's a client thing, do not write client, just try to write the name of the client. So the examiner gets the flavor that you have not crammed it straight away, and then you know the actual implication of each safeguard. Okay, then we have the employment with an audit client. Again, this is something very, very important to understand. What is this employment with an audit client? Now, this employment with an audit client is, for example, you are in the audit firm and then you go to audit a client. And then during the audit, you get an offer from the audit client. For example, like you are a member of the audit team. You go to audit the ABC company, and there's a finance director or the financial controller over there, and they see you and say, why don't you join our company as a finance manager? What you are getting in the firm, we'll pay you better. Now, for example, if you are not earning much in the firm, and obviously being in the industry is always an attraction for you, so you may accept that offer. Now, what this offer has to do with the ethical threats. The self-interest threat is when the offer is placed by the client to the member of the audit firm. Now, because when the offer is placed, they will always try to win the heart of the client because they need to have the win-win situation with them, having a good package, negotiations, things like that. So the self-interest threat is straight away when the client makes an offer to the member of the audit firm. This is the self-interest threat when the offer is being made. So independence of that member of the audit firm may be compromised with that offer. They may try to convince the client. They may try to, win the hearts of the client by accepting each and everything they are saying, just because they want to have the good negotiation with them for that particular job that is being offered. Familiarity is now the second context that you need to understand. So say, for example, that person who was being offered a role in the audit client moves to the audit client. Now, the people who are going to audit that particular client may have the familiarity with the ex-employee of the firm. And they may have the friend relationships, personal relationships, and based on that, they may, try to accept whatever their ex-colleague was saying. So this is the familiarity threat for the existing members of the firm and itself the firm. So this is the familiarity threat. But it depends that, what position that person has gone at the audit client, for example. If they work with the subject matter, the financial statement, then this threat is something that considers attention. If, for example, they are in the HR or, for example, working as an operational manager, nothing to do with the financial statements, then this threat is not significant. Any involvement with the audit team, this is again, for example, if they obviously they will be involved with the audit team if they are related to the subject matter, the financial statements. Length of time at the audit firm, if that person was something senior, spent a lot of time in the firm, then everybody knows that they may have the significant familiarity. If they just joined the firm and then they went to the audit client, then nobody knows them maybe. Then the threat is lower. So these are the factors. But ACCA Code of Ethics says that if there is a significant connection between the audit firm, the current members, and the ex-member, there's a significant connection, then there's no safeguard to reduce the threat to an acceptable level. If they still having hangouts, if they still know each other, having the parties, hangouts, discussions, attachments, then obviously there's no safeguard to reduce this threat to an acceptable level. Other safeguards probably would be modifying the audit plan. Now, why there is a need of modifying the audit plan? Because that person knows who was the ex-employee of the firm, how you usually audit, what type of evidences you get, how you choose the materiality levels, how you perform the testing, what are the risky areas that you usually look for. So they may try to manipulate those areas before you come to the audit. So what you can do is you change your audit plan, bring up a strategy in the plan that that person is not aware of. Now, this is possible when you take a senior person to the audit client. This changing the and modifying the audit plan is not a cup of tea of a junior member of the audit team. And then having an independent professional accountant reviewing the work of the former member, because that person was being offered the job role, so there was this clear self-interest threat. So just tell someone independent person to review the audit file of that person so that it is being confirmed that the independence was not compromised by having the job offer. Okay, now we have the temporary staff assignment. Now this is something very important. And although nowadays we see these type of arrangement less in number just because of those pandemics and COVID thing. But yes, this is the case that you need to understand. What is temporary staff assignment? So let's assume there's a financial controller or the finance director or someone within the accounts department who has gone on the annual leave, say, for example, and now they will be coming back after some certain number of days. For example, they have taken the annual leave of 30 days, let's assume. Now, obviously, the company cannot hire someone for 30 days only because that person will be coming back. And then maybe the the other members of the team, the existing other members of the team, are not competent enough or not having the time to take over those responsibilities. So what usually the firm audit client can do, they usually ask the firm whether they have an appropriate senior experienced personnel who can be seconded to the audit client for a shorter period of time. And then they take over the responsibility of that particular person who has gone on the leave. And then they go and go back once the person has arrived. So what is the ethical threat in that? The ethical threat is, for example, if that person goes there, take over the responsibilities of the financial control or finance director for certain period of time, and then come back and then go to the audit of the same client at the year end, then this results in a self-review threat because they will be reviewing their own work. They will be reviewing their own work. So this is the significant self-review threat. And also the familiarity, because on the daily basis, they will be sitting together, having lunch and tea together. So they may develop such familiarity which may threaten their independence. So what the ACCA Code of Ethics says regarding this, that the staff can be loaned, but they should be loaned for a shorter period of time. And within that shorter period of time, they must not assume any management responsibilities. Now, by the management responsibilities, we mean that they should not make the policies, they should not do any authorizations, initials, and whatever they are doing, they should just straight away follow the instruction of the audit client and do not decide anything yourself. Do not take any personal responsibility of the work you are doing. You just do whatever they are saying according to the certain pattern, whatever they suggest you. So what are the safeguards? Again, the safeguards are quite practical. The first safeguards should be the most appropriate safeguard is that you should not include that person in the audit team and you should take someone else to the audit. But for example, if you're taking that person to the audit, then you may, shuffle the responsibilities. For example, if that person has done the work in a particular department, let's assume the receivable department, do not get that person responsible for the receivable section of the financial statement and the sales, for example. You can give them the non-current assets, you give them the non-current liabilities. So if that person has worked in a particular department, so what you can do is you can restructure the responsibility and give them any other work which they were not responsible for. And then once they are done with their work, that work needs to be reviewed by an independent person so that it is being confirmed that their independence was not compromised. And then we are having the partner on the client board. Like obviously we know there is a board within the company known as the board of directors, and board of directors include the executive directors who are responsible for the day-to-day activities of the company. And then we see the non-executive directors responsible for the monitoring of EDs, the strategic input, and the remuneration input and things like that. So if the partner or an employee of the audit firm is being offered by the audit client to become the member of their board, then this represents the self-interest, right? Because when they become the member of their board, they will be having involvement with the decision-making of, for example, decision-making of what type, why this is a self-interest, right? For example, they will be responsible for the fee matters, like, and resolving the audit issues, even the selection of the firm. Once they become part of the board, they may get involved within such things, which is the self-interest. Obviously, when it comes to fee, the audit firms needs more and more fees. When it comes to the selection of the firm, they will always want that their firm should be selected for the audit. When they become part of the board, they get involved in such type of decisions, which threatens the independence of the firm. So if the role is being offered, the partner should politely refuse. For example, in the exam question, it is being written that the partner is being offered such role, then the safeguard would be that the partner should politely refuse the offer, decline the offer. Okay, then we have the family and personal relationship. So first of all, understand that we have two divisions in the family relationships. When we talk about the family relationships, when we talk about the family relationships, we have the immediate family members, and then we have the close family members. So when you talk about the immediate family members, they are the spouse and the dependent child. And when we talk about the close family members or the other family members, for example, brothers, sisters, and other cousins and things like that. So first of all, we are mainly concerned regarding the immediates with whom you have the daily connection, significant connection, the spouse or dependent child who lives with you, significant connection. So if you're going to the audit of any client and in the client you have someone from your immediate family members who are in a position to affect the financial statement, the subject matter, then this gives rise to the self-interest, family entry, and intimidation. A self-interest and intimidation, this is something that you need to understand. The familiarity is pretty sure that because you know each other, so there's a familiarity. How this is the self-interest and intimidation. For example, you are going to audit the client, and let's assume his spouse is there working as a financial controller, and the board even knows that, the client board knows that okay, you are going to audit their financial statements, and they tell to your spouse that make sure your spouse, they tell to your spouse that make sure your spouse is giving us a clean audit report, and if they do that and they do the audit quickly with minimal questions, we give you a promotion, we give you a bonus. So this is self-interest. Intimidation is vice versa. They may threaten her. For example, if they're having any significant issues with us, they're taking out issues within the financial statement, then we may fire you. Intimidation. Familiarity is pretty sure, when they're having familiarity with each other, that is the familiarity. But for example, if you're going to audit a client and there is someone, even from your immediate family members, who is not responsible for the subject matter, for example, an engineer over there who works on the production site. Now, this has nothing to do with financial statements, so nothing related to the familiarity and things like that. So even in the close family members, if they're in a position to affect the financial statement, then the most appropriate safeguard is to remove that individual from the audit team. Take someone else. Take someone else. You can make anyone else part of the audit team. But for example, in case of the close family members, their close family member works in a particular department, let's assume, for example, the payable department, then do not give them the audit of the purchases and the payable, and you can give them any other thing to audit, for example. There's a lot of financial statement heads, so you can allocate to them. But the firm should have the policy that before going or allocating a team to the audit, they should ask them straight away whether they are having any familiarity, close or immediate person over there who can affect the independence. If they tell you straight away, then those people should not make part of the team. Okay, then we have one of the most important slide, which is compensation and evaluation policies. So compensation means reward. Compensation means reward. And evaluation means appraisal. Evaluation means appraisal. So remember one thing, that the firm offer different types of services. The firm offer assurance services in which they give assurance, for example, audit and review engagements. And even the non-assurance services in which there is no assurance, but they are services, for example, taxation, corporate finance, internal audit, IT services, things like that. So there are a lot of which we are going to study in the next lecture. So compensation means reward, evaluation means appraisal. So if the member of the audit firm is being evaluated, is being appraised, is evaluated and appraised on selling non-assurance services to the audit client, then this gives rise to the self-interest. Like for example, you are a member of the audit firm. Let's assume you are an audit senior or manager and you're trying to be promoted as, for example, as a director, let's assume, of the firm. And then you are being told that you should bring business to the audit firm. The the audit clients who are just taking the assurance services from us, tell them that they should take the non-assurance services from us as well. And if they do so, we'll give you the promotion, we'll increase your salary. Now, this is the self-interest they are giving to their member of the audit firm. Because, for example, if I am the person who is being told that you will be giving a reward, your salary will be increased if you convince the audit client on taking non-assurance services from us. Maybe I tell the client that okay, you just take the non-assurance services from us. I'll not make you unhappy in the audit. Whatever you say, I'm going to accept that. I'll not ask many questions. I'll keep it simple. You just take the non-assurance services from us because my bonus is dependent on that. So this is a clear self-interest threat. That is why ACCA does not, promote such arrangements where the ethical threats are being created. So the firm should not have such policies where there is a clear self-interest threat and independence of the member may be compromised. So the safeguards would be removing the member from the audit team because they may have convinced the audit client unusually. And if they were in the team, then their audit work should be reviewed by an independent person. Then we are having the gifts and hospitality. Now, gifts and hospitality is a gift is a tangible thing, and hospitality is the services they are offering you. For example, giving you a nice hotel, a nice food, luxury food, and things like that. So this gives rise to the self-interest and familiarity threat. And ACCA Code of Ethics states that you should not accept significant gifts in hospitality that may affect your independence. For example, accepting mobile phones, laptops, cars, anything significant. Insignificant may, for example, they give you the ballpoint of their own company where there's a branding of their company. Or for example, a calendar, a keychain, you can accept those things. Or for example, even a normal food when you are being there on the audit, a cup of coffee, that's a courtesy they do. That is fine. I don't accepting anything significant.